Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm Brad Hairston.
And I'm Michael Marchuk.
And this is the weekly pulse check, taking a look at what's happening in the news around automation and AI. Michael, we've got 5 stories to cover today. So let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
The first one is from the Wall Street Journal. It's titled AI's Overlooked $97 billion Contribution to the Economy. So Wall Street Journal research has found that Americans are already enjoying roughly $97 billion in what they call consumer surplus resulting from Gen AI. And this is for calendar year 2024. Now, consumer surplus is the difference between the maximum that a consumer is willing to pay for a good or service and its actual price, which the researchers behind this article believe is a better and a more direct way of measuring economic well-being over GDP, that is. So what are your thoughts on this, Michael?
Well, as an economist, this is how I feel. Whenever we start talking about these kinds of numbers and the size and a different way of slicing some economic pie in a different way, I personally look at it in a skeptical way. I do believe that consumers in general have been getting some benefits from this. I would say that organizations are probably getting more benefits than consumers. And I think of consumers and organizations, companies versus people who are just doing it for their own accord. I think they're going to have a different kind of viewpoint on how they use it and what they use it for.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, that's a strange way of looking at it to say, hey, here's a free tool. Because you talk about what consumers are either willing to pay when it actually costs. There is a $20 OpenAI subscription that consumers can buy, but there's a whole bunch of other people that are likely using the free version because they're book dabbling and they are trying things out and they're playing around with it. So are they getting real value from it? I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they're getting they can, instead of spending 9 hours planning a trip to Italy, for example, they only spend 2 because now they've done it with OpenAI. And those 7 hours, based on an economist's $500 million per hour, gives the $97 billion for that one person, right? I have no idea how they're going to measure that. That's how I look at this article. I'm, again, a bit skeptical in terms of how they're measuring it, especially considering they're calling it a surplus, when in fact the economy as a whole is not seeing surpluses per se. So That's my opinion at this point.
Okay. I do like the point they made that in the short run, many companies are paying twice for the benefits of AI. First, they pay for the AI software, and then they have to pay to get train their employees and teach them how to use it. So I think in the end, the major point they're trying to make is the GDP and the productivity boost will come. It's just we're not seeing it yet. So they using this other kind of creative metric to try to, assess some positive financial benefit that has come from roughly 3 years of Gen AI usage. So give them credit for trying.
One of the other things that you could also say, let's just take from a children's tutor perspective, right? You can say, well, look at all these kids who have now been able to learn something with ChatGPT or one of the other models as a tutor. And I could say, well, that's great. They've learned that. Is that actually a surplus, or did you just put more tutors out of business? So again, when you start doing these kind of things, you slice and dice it very specifically, I think you may be missing out on the more broader impact that it may have or not have. So that's why I'm saying I'm taking this with a grain of salt.
They also make the point that the majority of benefits so far have been to consumers versus companies, which I don't disagree with. And I think that's part of it. I think when the companies start really experiencing the benefits, we're going to see the uptick. Right now, consumers, it's making our life easier. But as you said, most of us are using freebie models and getting our benefit that way. All right. The next article, which is somewhat related, is from MIT Sloan Review. It's titled, Why AI Will Not Provide Sustainable Competitive Advantage. Now, you take a title like that, and it sounds like it's completely refuting any benefit of AI, which it's not. But it is bringing forward the hot take that every serious technology advance that has come about eventually becomes pervasive. It becomes ubiquitous. Everybody has the same tools and technologies, and so it is no longer a competitive advantage. So you need something beyond that in order to compete and to exist as a company. So, Michael, what are your thoughts on the argument they're making?
I will summarize it with a quote from a movie, as you I'm sure are shocked to hear.
All right.
From Pixar's The Incredibles, when the evil villain at the end is talking about the advances and the fact that he wants everyone to be a super, because he said, when everyone's super, then no one is. And of course, you have to have an evil cackle laugh at the end of it. But the fact is, that's true. It's like saying, well, electricity is a competitive advantage. It is if you're comparing it to someone who doesn't have electricity. But when everybody gets electricity, then you've leveled the playing field.
Yeah.
When everybody got computers, it was an advantage for those first movers, and then it leveled the playing field.
Yeah.
And I think we're in the same spot again now. First movers are getting some advantages and benefits for it. But as this mentions here, it's going to level the playing field as we go forward. And the reality, which you and I have both talked about a bunch, is the technology is great in itself, but without people to understand how to leverage and take advantage of the technology, it's just that. It's just really cool technology. So people are always going to be at the forefront of the innovations that are really going to drive the outcomes that organizations are looking for.
Yeah, and the people are the most important piece because they bring the creativity, which every company, no matter what industry, no matter what sector, no matter how old the company is, it's creativity that makes it thrive and makes it continue to innovate and grow and meet customer needs in unique and compelling ways. So, I think that's the major point the article's trying to make is, don't depend on AI to keep your company around and, keep adding to the bottom line. Ultimately, it's still going to be your people. So cultivate your people, continue to rely on those innately human capabilities, and no disagreement here.
All right.
The next article is from Wall Street Journal again. This one is why Walmart is overhauling its approach to AI agents. So, Michael, like many companies, Walmart invested heavily in agentic AI. They built hordes of agents, and guess what? Their customers got overwhelmed. Things got more confusing versus less confusing. So now the retail giant has stepped back. They're looking at how they can simplify. So give us your thoughts on this very interesting story, Michael.
Yeah, so they were talking about the number of agents that they had. And a lot of these are dealing with the customer service agents that they had introduced to interface with their customers. And to your point, when you have lots of them, you can go in one way to find one agent and into another way to find a different agent. And they may or may not give you the same answer because, as you know, they're drawing from their different training models. So what they're trying to do is consolidate into 4, what they call them super agents. And these super agents will have certain capabilities that are built into them to give them a more well-rounded experience. And at this point in time, they're working through not just the customer facing, but they're also looking at supplier facing models as well, which will allow them to really take it to a new level rather than just doing customer support kind of activities. But as they were saying, they're leveraging these super agents where they're kind of consolidating the activities and the knowledge base within those kinds of within those individual agents rather than having many agents. So, two things for me. One is I appreciate the fact that they're trying to do this. I think it's going to be at the end, whenever it gets rolled out officially, it'll probably be a better experience for Walmart customers, for suppliers, for their employees. But in the meantime, they're saying, we're still under development on the next set of these things. They have one, Sparky, they call it, which is their customer facing one. And they're still working on the supplier facing one another. So I think the challenge they're going to find is that getting that super agent to be able to handle everything is going to be difficult. Just like training one person to do every activity within a department or multiple departments. Can you do it? You sure can. It's just going to take a long time for them to be proficient in all of those activities. So I think they're going to get there. And I mean, Walmart's got the funding and the capabilities to be able to do this. And I'm sure they've got some really smart people if Meta hasn't hired them all away from them yet. But we'll see. We'll see how they go with their super agents as they roll them out.
Yeah. And they do say in the article that there will be other agents working in the background. So these super agents will be kind of running the show, but they'll be relying on a bunch of others. They're just going to insulate the consumers from those.
Yep.
I really like the personas
I agree.
They chose. I mean, there's one for customers, for employees, for engineers, and then sellers and suppliers.
Yep.
I think, they've kind of covered the 4 key areas, if you will. And I like that. I like the simplicity of it. So I think their strategy is good. They definitely are committed to AI agents, so they're not losing any steam around that. Only one of them is up and running right now. That's the customer agent called Sparky. One is coming in a few months, and then the other 2 will be released next year. So you got to always pay attention to what the world's largest retailer is doing. I think they're the world's largest retailer, aren't they still?
I'm pretty sure
Alibaba
they are.
Haven't taken them over, or any one of those?
I don't think Alibaba has. I think Amazon is pretty close, but I'm not sure. If you compare the brick and mortar version, I'm pretty sure you have Walmart as the standalone.
All right. Well, no disrespect to Amazon. They're probably right in there. Okay. Next article is from Deep Learning AI's The Batch, issue 312. And this one is titled, "There is now a path for China to surpass the US in AI." Now, the centerpiece of this article is from Andrew Ng, who is a very prominent voice in AI. He's the co-founder of Coursera. He's a Stanford professor. He's the former head of Google Brain. Some say he's the one that coined the term agentic AI. That's something right there. And Ng asserts that even though the US is still ahead, China has tremendous momentum and could overtake the US in the not so distant future. Break it down for us, Michael.
So the basis he has to talk about this is talk about, it's really one of those proprietary versus open source kind of battles, if you will. So in America, we have several large players, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, Meta, and they're all developing their own models. Now, you can argue that Meta's open source Llama model is just that, it's an open source model. But as we all know, Mark Zuckerberg is spending obscene amounts of cash to hire in the top talent from wherever you can steal it from, likely not to create an open source model, but to have something that's a little more closed source. And that secret sauce that these American companies have is a closely guarded secret for a reason, because they spend a lot of money on it. And because they spent that money on it, they want to be able to take advantage of that competitive advantage that they're building into their models. Whereas some of the models that are being developed within China, certainly the ones that have gotten the most exposure to date, are certainly coming up with like the DeepSeek and some of these others that people understand, like, oh, these are open source models to start with. And while the training behind it is mysterious, because all the training that our current models we have in this mysterious in every model, right? We don't know exactly what it was trained on. But knowing that some of the answers that are returned from a Chinese model might be somewhat censored in various areas or reflect a particular point of view that maybe not the rest of the world shares. So we see these things. The reality is that if you take all that away, the fact is that the progression of advancements is happening at such a rapid rate within China and these open source models that it makes you wonder, well, perhaps there's a competitive advantage that they're trying to build into the ethos of the way they're educating and training their engineers within China, whereas within the Americas, being very, very competitive and certainly looking for valuations. When you look at every company that's going out there, all these AI startups may have some extremely bright, talented people that are working it, but because they're trying to raise funding and work together to create a product or a product base that they could then sell to someone else and create additional value, their focus is going to be holding that close to the vest and not sharing the information or sharing those kind of model changes. Whereas in China, it appears a lot of this is happening at the research level where it's being exposed, and not just in China, but to the rest of the world, allowing everyone else to be able to take advantage of these advances. Now, you and I both know that the Chinese are hampered a bit because of the lack of access to the NVIDIA chips. Now, what this article, his discussion mentions was, well, yes, that's true, but what they're doing is they're just ramping up on larger scales of lesser powerful chips to be able to do their training of these models to kind of even out that kind of gap. So instead of having 72 super powered chips, they're able to do that with 384 lesser powered chips.
Right.
So there's obviously going to be more complexity as you continue to scale those environments. But the reality is that they're able to do this in an open sourced way. So which allows, and we've seen too, like with DeepSeek and some of these other ones, the training of these models may actually require less resources overall because of their influence and their innovations that they're putting forward. So you combine this kind of technology with AI, plus several others with semiconductors, he said, just in general, the battery structures, the electric cars, on and on. He's going down the list saying that, hey, the major competitive advantages that the Americans had for a long time is now being shrunk substantially as China is ramping up their capabilities and capacities. So it's that's what I read out of this particular post.
Well, the battle is definitely not lost, but the U.S. will need to be aggressive and make all the right moves. And we've broken down the U.S. AI policy, recently released, and they certainly talk a lot about China in there. So it is a priority for the U.S. and the U.S.-based tech companies. But the competition is pretty stiff here. So
it is
interesting the way it's developing.
And speaking of competition, are we going to move to our next article?
We are. The last article is about some competitors, although they're friends, they're frenemies, they're collaborators. Who knows what they are, what they would say about each other. But the article is from TechCrunch. It's titled, Anthropic Cuts Off OpenAI's Access to its Claude Models. Now, Anthropic did just revoke OpenAI's access to its Claude family of models. And it's interesting the reason they gave for this and the response. So, Michael, why did they do that?
Well, they called it a direct violation of their terms of service, and that's why they did it. Now, what did they violate? Well, they were trying to say that, and it's possible that OpenAI was using their technical staff to leverage Claude's coding capabilities in order to further OpenAI's GPT-5. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Let's use another competitor's coding capabilities to make our product even better. Right. I thought that was very interesting. So it, of course, based on that, OpenAI said, "Oh, we respect it, etc. We're disappointed in our API, but considering our API is still available to them, etc., etc." So Obviously, there's a competitive nature between these two organizations.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where Anthropic stands in terms of the way they use OpenAI's APIs, if they do at all, because that's one thing that really isn't mentioned in the article. Just was just that OpenAI was using Anthropic's. So it's interesting to see. So we talk about these closed source, and now we have this capability that was purchased by retail. I'm going to, as a company, engage this. I'm going to pay you for the access to it for my engineers, but then restrict it, or in this case, revoke it, because you're actually competing with them and creating a competitive product. So it's interesting in my mind.
Well, OpenAI saw DeepSeek do this to them, so they're just following their example. They're just applying what they've learned in the dog-eat-dog world of AI development. So you can't blame them.
Can't blame them.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have today for the Pulse Check. Remember, we publish another podcast every week with an incredible guest. So be sure and check that out. And otherwise, we will see you next time on the Pulse Check. Bye for now.